Hello and welcome to Inside Marvel from ABC News Digital. I am your host, Walt Hickey. Today, I'm joined from ABC News by Michael Rothman. How's it going?
Oh, hello.
By Charles Beacham. He's an editor at Marvel.
Howdy.
And out on the line, we've got Jim Zub. He's a writer behind some of the books that we're talking about today. How's it going, Jim?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Great, great. So today we're talking about Secret Empire number 5. We're talking about Secret Empire United, again, which I believe is the book that you wrote, Jim. And then we are talking about, towards the end of it, a little bit of Uncanny Avengers. So let's get into the United book. This is a book about the X-Men. The X-Men have kind of come out of the coup that Captain America led pretty far ahead. They have their own nation, which is a thing that they've aspired to for a long time. But they've got to deal with Hydra. They've got to deal with Captain America. And a lot of folks aren't super content with that. It's kind of outlaid in this book. So, Jim, what can you tell us about it? What kind of story are you telling here?
Secret Empire United is really, it's a political intrigue book, but then it's got a really great kind of ground level of action as well. So there's sort of two levels happening at the same time. There's this top level kind of political machination happening, and then there's a ground level kind of battle between the people of New Tion and, the Hydra Nation of America.
So again, it's two-fold book, ton of action. We have a really great prison break sequence going on in here. And then also there's this intrigue. So I kind of want to talk about some of the relationships going on. Who's running this country? Who's dealing with Captain America and Hydra's America? Who are the players that we're looking at in this book?
Sure. There's really, it's kind of, this is one of the neat things about the book, is that you've got Zorn and kind of this ruling council of mutants that are interfacing with Hydra, but they've got an ambassador in Hank McCoy, the Beast. He's obviously one of the founding members of the X-Men, but he's also a longtime Avenger as well. So he's kind of got an emotional, kind of tie to both camps, which makes it, I think, that much more interesting as Captain America and the rest of the kind of Hydra Nation is trying to interface with the mutants and trying to figure out how these two very different kind of groups work with each other and how their, whether it's their economies or their border disputes or things like that, how you work this stuff through, particularly given the way that Hydra took over America and kind of the nastiness that's built up around all of that.
Now, for those watching, we are also taking questions on Facebook and Twitter. Feel free to send those along, and then we can potentially ask our guests all about them. One thing that really interests me about this book, Jim, is that the mutants finally get what they've always wanted. And it's, not worth it in a lot of different ways. How do you kind of disentangle this getting what you want, but it's really not what you wanted at all?
Well, that's exactly the way you put it. So, mutant kind has wanted representation in a lot of different ways. And whether it's kind of the way that, Professor Charles Xavier wanted, where he kind of wants to integrate, with humankind, or something far more extreme, like, Magneto wanting to get revenge or wanting in different times to have their own particular place for mutant kind. This is what's happened with New Tion. So you've got Zorn, you've got Beast and Sebastian Shaw and Archangel and several other key mutants that are kind of running this nation, but it really is kind of a gilded cage in this way. They have this space that they've always wanted, but under such horrific circumstances and in a really difficult way that's just pushing all this emotional stuff and political stuff to the forefront.
That's fascinating. Again, so we see threads of this all over what's going on, especially in the main book. So let's hop on. Let's talk about Secret Empire. Let's talk about, again, this is a huge week for it. We're going to go through the book basically plotline by plotline because we're kind of at a crossroads on a whole bunch of different issues here. So, Michael, let's talk about the beginning, right? We've got twofold things going on. We've got Black Widow and we've got her champions, and they are doing two separate missions. Well, what's going on over there?
Yes, two very interesting separate missions.
Yeah.
So the champions are, as you put it earlier, breaking into a retirement home basically to save a very interesting old man who apparently is the key to winning the war.
Yeah, child soldiers raiding a nursing home. That's just standard practice at this point.
We don't know why yet. It's very interesting. Maybe it's Stan Lee. Maybe he'll rewrite the entire thing if they
Charles
break him
Beacham,
out.
what do we got? Do you know who that fella is?
That's a pretty good theory.
Yeah?
Maybe you should be writing for us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll pitch that to Nick.
I sense some sarcasm, and I don't like it. So I'll move on to the next topic. Yes, and Black Widow has basically given herself up to Hydra to get in the room with Viper and wheel and deal, and we have another betrayal that's happened, and it looks like Viper's going to help the team to try to kill Cap.
It's been amazing to me, in this issue specifically, to see how much people are trading in on these relationships, and using them to their advantage. And it's really interesting because you think these characters who have these long-running relationships with each other would have maybe more loyalty to their specific cause, and really it's kind of turned into everyone's out for themselves. It's interesting that, without Captain America there as the Captain America that we know and we love, to hold everyone together and to keep them true to themselves, how things have kind of deteriorated.
Yeah, I love how in this story everything gets just a little bit shabbier when Captain America flips sides. Like you have the villains get more villainous. The gray area guys, they tend to, like we saw with the Punisher, we saw with, again, we're going to get to it, but there's a mole in the Avengers who has been a long-time Avenger. And even, like, the good guys are starting to make some hard decisions. And it's taken the world to a very, very fascinating place from this. So.
And even Cap is an influence that I forgot to bring it up for the United book. The Emma Frost situation. So Zorn's actually, I'm allowed to say this, right? Oh, I didn't know if it was, like, breaking any spoilers. So Zorn actually isn't really running Nution. It's Emma Frost controlling Zorn, and she also seems to have a deal with Cap, but she's also not very fully forthright with Cap. Yeah. It's just layers and layers and layers of deception and dealings and back boardroom type stuff. It's interesting.
Yeah, Jim, we do have that chunk of it. Again, a lot of it either is pinned on Faustus or she has legitimately found evidence of Faustus intervention. But what's going on with that end throne room scene? Again, there's the power behind the throne, so to speak. What are we looking at? Jim?
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, you're asking me on that.
Yeah, of course. Sorry.
Yeah, my apologies. With United, what's amazing about it is that when Nick and I were planning the issue out, we were really talking about how to make sure that, every tie-in issue had a really strong hook. And this idea of revealing, where Emma Frost has been since IVX. And she's been, building, and like you said, kind of the power behind the throne. She's been puppet mastering Zorn and trying to set up the mutants in a stronger position. And really that was kind of the big buildup of that issue, that United's got, the mutant versus human kind of struggle, but then exemplified, like you said, a lot of this kind of backdoor dealing and complex relationships, that it's not just as simple as someone saying what they feel or saying, where their loyalties lie, but a lot of everyone has an ulterior motive. Every character sort of double dealing on the side or trying to position themselves well for the future.
Which I love this book, because, again, like Hydra, they're the baddies, and the baddies have a propensity to all go Starscream on each other, stab each other in the back, try to take the new throne, and everybody is conspiring in this. It's fascinating.
Starscream.
Yeah. So we have, again, Widow, we have the champions, and again, Charles, yeah?
Oh, if we're talking about United and some of these, the conspiring and things that are happening, we talked about how the X-Men finally have what they want.
Yeah.
We look at the Hydra High Council and these people who have devoted their lives to Hydra, and they finally have what they want too. They've got control, but still they're not happy with how they got the control and who's at their head. And so we get to see some of this, or it's at least alluded to, or and very pointedly, that Faustus is not happy with Steve being in control here. They're like, yeah, sure, we've got control of America, but it's this guy who is he?
Well, the funny thing is that the only loyal person on the council seems to be Baron Zemo. He's like always defer. He's very deferential to Steve. He's very supportive. I'm waiting for the time because I just want him to kind of like take him down and out because he's getting annoying. But for what's his name? Doctor keeps challenging Cap.
Faustus.
Not Faustus, but the Zol.
Arnim Zola.
Yeah.
Zola, yeah. He is just getting aggressive, and you can tell it because he's not in power. He's not happy with it, and so that's going to come to a head at some point in time. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. The inner fighting of this council is very interesting.
It's an organization devoted to power, the exertion of power, the maintenance of power, and all that kind of thing. And when they finally obtain that power, and they're not the ones running it, it's very interesting to see, like, when they were all working towards the same goal, they were outstandingly successful. But the minute that they get it, then they start the alliances begin to break down.
One question for you, both you guys on the line. That I just noticed, and I feel like I'm Captain Obvious here. But Madam Hydra, this feels very much like it's going to be a big point down the road. But has anyone picked up the fact that she's so sweet and innocent compared to other nefarious leaders? Is that done in an essence to kind of maybe cajole Cap more, because obviously he responds to that more? Because every time I see her, she doesn't really strike fear in a visual way. But it's really interesting that she seems so agreeable, and I know she's there to charm Cap, but that really stuck out at me with the last issue.
I picked up on that too, and I think that as we're watching all of these different relationships and how people interact, that it's very possible that that's a thing that we're going to see come to fruition. That she is manipulating him as much as he thinks he's in control of everything.
Yeah, again, it could just be that she's standing next to a tentacle monster and a robot, and that makes it look better. But I want to get to some of these really great standoffs that we have in this book. First up, we have Black Panther, again, longtime friend T'Challa of Iron Man, and Iron Man's basically trying to cajole a chunk of the Cosmic Cube out of Wakanda. And that does not go very well. It's a beautiful two-way spread. Essentially, Tony wants it, and T'Challa says, no, you can't have it. I don't trust any of you guys. Lots of people have come to this country saying, we'll be good friends. We're not like the previous guys who showed up. We're not going to buy that anymore. We're going to hold on to this. When you get your 90% of the cube, come on back to me. Then we'll put it together and handle it, and Wakanda will fix this. But I really just love this confrontation, because it's two characters, again, mining this beautiful history of conflict between these two guys and friendship between these two guys to try to get this cool outcome.
I mean, that was a heavy scene to me. Again, it's a lot like we've talked about on previous episodes. We talked about Brave New World and Namor's relationship with some of these characters. I see again here T'Challa. He's a king. He's got these people that he's got to look out for, and there's no more trust. It's I can't trust. Cap's turned to the dark side. I can't trust you, Tony, to do the thing that you're saying you're going to do. I'm the only one who I know will do what's best for my people.
What's the big?
I think you're.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I mean,
no problem. I think you're dealing with two heads of state as well. That's the other thing is, it's no longer just about the leader of a team or something like that. Cap, Black Panther's not being deferential to Iron Man as the leader of the Avengers. You've got now the political machinations are so much bigger. The stakes are so much bigger than before.
Absolutely. And I think that this leads us pretty much into our next point, which is that the Avengers really suck at this. They are not getting the cube. The evil is winning because good guys are dumb, and it's not going well for them. They actually haven't progressed. They haven't obtained as much of the Cosmic Cube as they need to, and they're being outpaced by Hydra at this point. So the baddies are winning very, very strongly.
Yeah, I mean, you said jokingly, the evil's winning because the good guys are dumb, but I keep coming back to this idea that without Captain America there, without that ultimate symbol of hope, there's no success for heroes. You have to have that person who's always going to be there to lift you up. And try as he might, that's not really Tony's forte.
No, he's a vestigial AI that they found on a drive and plugged it. And again, Hawkeye, to his credit, is kind of leading it just as he was always kind of nice lieutenant of him. But absent Cap, they don't have their leader.
We'll say, as a reader, as you read this, it's now starting to sink in more and more as we go through the months, but especially this week. And in my head, everything feels jumbled, it feels cluttered, it feels disoriented, and I feel like it's almost the reader's meant to feel what they're feeling, because I can't. The roads are laid out there, but we just don't know where they go right now. But there's just nothing that's clear. Everything's so nebulous, and you can feel that as you go through these pages. It's just without that shiny beacon of hope, everything's kind of blah.
Yeah, I mean, I love that sequence as the heroes were out looking for the Cosmic Cube shards in this issue, and just every single step they were met with defeat and despair, and then they finally give up and go home, and Hawkeye turns to everyone and he's like, guys, what's going on? The people here, not the heroes, the regular people, they needed this.
They need to win. They need to win really bad to turn things around.
So a couple of things happen at this point. Number one, we see who the mole is. We see who the mole, Mockingbird is the mole, which is fascinating. And then we also see Tony was lying. Tony didn't have a way to detect these cubes. He was just working off of this remaining intel from the Rick Jones leak. And so these are two pretty devastating blows, right? We see that not only is the person who's been undermining this concern really, really central to it, but we also see that, again, Tony has just kind of been lying to everybody as well. And so this is kind of, you would think that it's the lowest moment, but you wait a couple pages, all right? We're going to get to that soon. So after this, I want to move to a really fascinating set of panels. Jim, so in this book, we have Captain America talk to Hank, and it takes place right on the outskirts of Mjolnir's parking space. They are using soft power as strong as you can. And this is, again, one of those really tense conversations that, again, really, really ties in with the United issue. What's going on in these two guys' minds?
Yeah, we had a similar sequence in United, like you mentioned there. And both sequences are really crucial for sort of setting up kind of the different relationship, or the way that, Beast and Captain America are kind of dealing with each other. Cap is, in the Secret Empire issue, he's basically, threatening New Tion that he's going to draw forth Mjolnir and go in there and cause havoc if they don't sort of bring themselves under control. That New Tion has been given this space, but there are limits, to what Steve Rogers will allow for them within the scope of that. And, Hank is trying to be pragmatic. In the United issue, he's a little more kind of downtrodden and trying to reach out to Steve, and very much feeling like, try and get into his head or understand how this has happened. And in the scene in Secret Empire with Mjolnir there, I think it's much more of a pragmatic approach. Like, Hank realizes, okay, we're dealing with this on a very diplomatic level, and this is essentially a threat, and he's got to treat it as such.
Absolutely. And again, so we see these kind of confrontations between very old friends, and friends who haven't always gotten along. Black Panther hasn't always gotten along with Tony. Hank and the Avengers haven't always get along. I believe that there have been 1 to 2 events called Avengers versus X-Men in the past. These guys have gone toe-to-toe occasionally. But again, just kind of really drawing on this fascinating history. Charles, what do you think is at the kind of heart of this conversation?
I mean, again, this is all about Steve getting what he wants, and this particular moment, he wants that cosmic cube shard that we saw at the end of United that Emma has, and I mean, I don't know if it's completely clear whether or not Hank knows, whether or not Beast knows that she's got it, but Steve doesn't care. And one of the things that was really interesting to me is this is a moment where we could really see that how dark Steve has gone. Hank makes or Beast makes a comment about playing God, and how hard it must be for Steve to not do that. And he's like, I don't need the hammer to play God. I've got control now. I am in charge, which is a really dark moment for Steve. To this point, I think a lot of what he's been doing could be perceived through his lens as altruistic. He's trying to do the best thing for the most people. But here, this is very much...
Could not agree more with you, because this felt like the moment that he almost, in a movie, that pivotal pivot where someone becomes unredeemable. And that almost felt like it too. Also, having seen as many movies, shows, and books, I also felt like you're going to pay for this at some point down the road, because whenever a bully continues to bully someone else, and as an audience you start to feel and say, this isn't right, it does not work out for them well down the road. So there was kind of a gas feeling, but there was also followed by like, you're going to get what's coming to you, because this is not okay. And
he's punching down. And so, Jim, I'm just kind of wondering more of your thoughts on this. Like, he's playing God a bit. Like they are trying to extract power a little bit. What are your kind of vibe on where this relationship goes?
I think one of the things that's cool about this, it ties into one of the other scenes where you've got Thor, Odin's son, basically kind of looking for guidance, and he talks about the fact how much he respects Steve Rogers and how much he knows that what they're doing is wrong, but he doesn't fully sort of grasp the human political nature of what's happening there. And I think that ties back into that scene really well. Like you talk about playing God, that, there is this Asgardian god figure basically having a crisis of faith about the same kinds of issues that Steve Rogers doesn't seem to be too concerned about, that he feels very confident, or at least is projecting confidence, to the enemy, which is at the end of the day how he's viewing New Tion, that there's something to be contained, there's something to be controlled, rather than an ally, of course.
So I love the story of Thor in the past couple of years, because he was rendered unworthy, he has lost control of Mjolnir, and he is, as you were saying, Jim, he is a god having a crisis of faith. And that is just such a cool concept. This, like, over the past couple of years, it's been controversial at times. It's been riveting. I believe Jason Aaron has covered a lot of that run, but it is just a great series of stories of the story of a god who has had a crisis of faith. And getting into that area, we see the three Avengers who are still remaining with Cap. We see Vision, who's been hacked. We see Maximoff, Wanda, who has been, I believe, occupied by a demon? Mm-hmm. Is that the logistics that we're talking
killing
here?
her handlers.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's not taking that great. It is going very, very badly for the people immediately tasked with her safety. And then, of course, Thor, who seems like he's in it for the right reasons. Interestingly enough, I've been watching a lot of The Bachelor, but he's in it for the right reasons. He wants to help, and he just follows this role model that he's loved his entire life, and that looks like it's going to break soon. Yeah.
I mean, again, I come back to that without Steve being who he really is, there's no hope for these people.
Yeah.
It's funny to we talk about this God having a crisis of faith, and it's a crisis of faith in man, someone who he's always looked at as pure and righteous, but he's asking me to do something terrible. And how is it that I'm not worthy to wield the power that can make a difference here, and he can. It's amazing. I really love that. It hits you.
Yeah. It's a good story, you know? Like, because, again, the story of Thor has always been like, why should I care? Why should I care about these tiny people? Why should, I'm a god, these are just guys. And it's always the story of his friends who have kind of gotten him through that. And now he's seeing, well, one of his friends is a vestigial program of himself, and then the other one of his friends is leading a fascist organization across the United States of America. And where's he going to land? Like, it's a really cool story that I believe kind of comes to a head next week. We don't have preview panels this week, but we do have, we will be talking about the forthcoming issue, which should be a doozy from what we can hear. One thing that I do actually want to, we do have questions coming in from some of the crowd. Mihai asks, who's your favorite hero in this story? Who is your favorite hero that you guys have been following?
Honestly, one of my favorite heroes in Secret Empire right now is Scott Lang. I've loved watching him.
Good pull.
Nice. And this is maybe a little silly. I just had a daughter earlier this year, so it's been really cool to watch him, and especially in this issue, as he's texting his daughter and making dumb dad jokes, and just telling her about his experience, and trying to find some hope in that relationship when there's not really any to be had.
That's such a good pull.
That's a really good pull.
Yeah.
That's a great read of that relationship, too, because I know we looked at that earlier when we were talking about how much these guys suck at their jobs. We were looking at, again, Scott Lang, he was texting his daughter the whole time, trying to tell her it's going to be okay and not really knowing how. Jim, who have you been following in this book?
I obviously, the whole thing is so complex, but I really love Natasha's role. I like Black Widow because she's sort of being forced back to this kind of darker side of, her kind of espionage nature, that she's going back to this more of a role as an assassin, as, an anarchist and spy, but she's got to take these young pure heroes and the champions and kind of forge them, put them up against a moral quandary. It's all well and good to say that the champions, when they were formed, they said, we're not going to kill people. We're going to be the heroes that we've seen that our heroes, the people that inspired us, are no longer. But now they're put up against a situation where it seems like their morals can't hold. And I love the complexity of that. And Black Widow is really kind of the fulcrum of the weight that's being pushed upon them to make a decision and to do, to not to corrupt them, because I don't think that that's the right descriptor for it, but really to just address the reality and the difficulty and the darkness of the situation. I really think she's a great character, and I love the way that Nick and the rest of the crew are using her to move that story forward. And the start of Secret Empire 5, where she plays this deep game to get Viper to betray Hydra, I think is just a great turn on her character and a great usage of Natasha.
Yeah, it's great. Again, values aren't values if they're not tested. And she's got a really great story with those champions. Michael.
I think Sam Wilson's been interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I think I kind of started to feel I've come into his shoes reading. The more I read these books, he was kind of giving up at the beginning, right? He was just kind of just like, I can't do this. It's his best friend.
Yeah.
And now he's
Which
almost...
we've actually got some Dreamcap stuff as well that we can talk about.
Yeah,
talk about
yeah.
in that sense. This issue, what have you been looking at with Sam Wilson?
He seems like he's kind of rallied himself out of his rut, which
Yeah.
is nice. And as you read, you kind of... I feel like you were talking about next month being a pivotal issue. I definitely feel like you guys have broken me down enough. I'm ready to have some inspiration, and I'm ready to move forward. And I kind of feel similar to him now in his mindset with this.
All right. So there's this whole sequence. Again, we have this really fascinating side story going through the woods. Nick Spencer has promised that he is not telling a story about stories, and we're going to take him at his word. So let's try to go back to the weekly theory bucket and find out what do we think is going on in these woods.
Summer
That's
camp.
Stunning. Yeah, summer camp. All right. So again, we've, for the past issue, Steve Rogers, or a stunning visage of him, has been hanging out with his buddies. He's basically taking a walk through the history of Captain America. He has started out with his service in the war, his mother, then his service in the war. Then he made some friends. Again, these are two closest of his friends. We see Bucky, we see Sam, and now his friends are being taken away after a delightful time at summer camp, and he is confronted with the Red Skull. So what is going on in these woods? Weekly roundtable theory. Let's go. Rothman, what you got?
Oh, man. I don't even know. I have no idea. You threw me off when you came out with the Red Skull without a shirt on and a barbed wire bat. I don't. It does seem like the
art in these pages is great.
It seems like an internal battle of conscience. I lean towards that, but that seems too simple. It seems too easy. I'm expecting a bigger wow factor, so I'm trying to fight against my natural inclination to say that it seems like it's his internal monologue. It can't be. Charles, take us away. What do you got?
I'm a horrible liar, guys.
Oh,
As
yeah,
you
no, you know this stuff.
I mean, it's gonna be really important, and obviously, and I love those pages, and it's hard not to when I know what the payoff's going to be there. It's gonna be a big shift for Steve as we reveal what's happening there. I mean, I think this is the most danger that we've seen him and his friends in this dream sequence, and it's going to be really cool to see how they get out of it.
I really like this sequence because, like, again, there's a lot of not like literary references, but there's like the story of a righteous man in the wilderness for quite some time enduring trials. That's a fundamental story in Western society, right? It goes back to biblical stories, it goes back to contemporary stories, it goes back just to really all throughout literature, and kind of seeing, again, this guy, righteous man in the wilderness, confronting his demons, going through his past. That is a really essential story, and it's very cool seeing the guy who's kind of been at the center of the Marvel Universe address it. Let's talk about that other Cap who's now nuking a mountain in Nevada. So we have a number of pages, basically essentially showing Cap mounts an attack, and it is bad. Basically, this looks like remember earlier when we were like, oh, it can't get any worse than this. It got worse than this. So, Charles, what are we looking at?
I mean, the big thing that we saw here was the reveal that Bobby Mockingbird is working with Hydra, which is insane. She was a SHIELD agent for many years. And she's been kind of leading the charge. We saw her in another one of our tie-ins, Underground, leading the group of heroes that are searching for the Cosmic Cube, Cosmic Cube shards, and here she just lets everyone down.
Yeah.
She feels natural to me, though. I mean, the military background. I mean, I don't want to compare her to the Punisher, though. You know, he's obviously idolizes Cap in a different way. But I could see her being the mole. It wasn't, I could see that happening, even though it still is shocking to see her flip like that.
Yeah.
It was a shock, yeah. One thing that I like about this is that this book ends on a really fascinating shot. We get to do this because, again, so on the show last year, we talked about that issue where Bruce Banner gets shot by an arrow with Hawkeye, no less. And then, last shot of the page, we have Bruce Banner back, or something like him. I don't know. Again, there's the notion that it's a short amount of time.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of time that he has to work with Bruce, but the Bruce came back.
Yeah.
Rothman, what are you thinking?
Again, I'm stumped. They call him the secret weapon, correct? Yeah. So I think they're just gonna rage him like crazy and set him free, and it's not gonna be a pretty thing.
Yeah, I think they point him straight at Clint. They say, "Hey, Clint's down there, right?"
Right.
Like,
yeah. There's that mild issue because Clint definitely killed that guy.
Yeah.
That's great. That is paying off. So before we get into previews, disclosures, all the stuff coming up that we want to talk about coming up in following weeks and nice and soon, I do want to talk about disclosure real quick. Both Marvel Entertainment and ABC News are owned by the Walt Disney Company. So kind of moving forward, what are we looking forward to, Charles? So what kind of books do we? I know that you have Brave New World coming out.
Yeah, we've got more issues of Brave New World coming out, which is always exciting. It's an anthology series where we get to see lots of different pockets of the Marvel Universe. Our issue 3, we're back in the Dark Force dimension here in New York City, and we one of our bigger stories, we get to see some of what's happening with the regular people.
Nice.
It's focused on J. Jonah Jameson and another young reporter, and kind of her journey in finding her place. And
is he struggling to get pictures of Spider-Man with the bad lighting going on?
Oh man! He's not looking for Spider-Man this time. He is being hunted. He is being hunted.
What?
So it's going to be really cool. That's all I'm going to say about that.
That's great. And I know we actually have some preview panels from Uncanny Avengers number 25. Jim, you want to? So what can you tell us about this book?
Sure. So this artwork by Kim Jacinto and Tamara Bonvillain is gorgeous. I just got to say, like, working with a great art team makes everything go, that much easier. And whether it's Ario, Anandito on Secret Empire United or here on Uncanny, we've just got great artists working on all the books. This sequence that we're looking at is in Manhattan. It's covered in a dark force field. And so what's happening is there's a bunch of heroes that Steve Rogers has isolated away from the rest of the world to try and minimize their impact and to keep them from messing with his plans. And so those people are trapped in New York City, but it's surrounded by a dark force field, which is also kind of accessing this dimension of these shadowy kind of demonic creatures that are now attacking New York and putting the city, in a really dire place. They don't have communication with the outside world. They don't have access to resources or medical. Electricity's gone down. It's a kind of a fight for survival. And then in the midst of all that, Dr. Voodoo, who's on the Uncanny Avengers team, has been possessed by one of these creatures. And so he was one of their sort of supernatural linchpins to hopefully try and figure this thing out. And now he's been taken over by the enemy. And the Uncanny Avengers are definitely on the defensive. And they have no idea what's happening outside the field. The irony, of course, is that the Uncanny Avengers were formed by Steve Rogers as the Unity Squad to show people that they could all kind of work together. And now they're off on their own. He disbanded the Unity Squad, but they've stuck together as a bit like a family. They don't have an Avengers mandate anymore. And now they're just fighting for what they think is right.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much. So that is Uncanny Avengers. That's coming out. We have Brave New World coming out. In a few weeks, we're going to have the next issue of, again, Secret Empire. We are really looking forward to this. This is a world that Cap, in so many different ways, built. It's a world that the Unity Squad that you just mentioned, Jim, that all these different characters were inspired or brought into this by this guy. And now he's just turncoat. So now he's nuking Nevada, about to unleash a Hulk on Clint Barton. And, man, that guy's got a bow and arrow and not much else. So, with that, foretending doom, we will see you guys soon after this next issue drops. Michael, Charles, Jim, thank you so much for joining me. All right.
Thank you for having me.
I am Walt Hickey from 538 with ABC News Digital. This has been Inside Marvel. Thank you so much for joining us.